Hello and welcome back to Time Under Tension. I'm your host, Olivia Gravengard, professional bodybuilder, registered nurse, and health coach, helping you achieve excellence in every area of your life by optimizing your nutrition and movement. This week, we are talking about nutrition, which is one of my absolute favorite topics. I have been obsessed with nutrition since I was probably 15. As some of you might know, I struggled with an eating disorder that started in middle school and really progressed throughout high school and college, then eventually found bodybuilding, which was a great bridge to be able to start working with my body and now follow like an intuitive eating lifestyle and really have learned over time to listen to my body and to allow it to guide me to the foods, the nourishment patterns that I need to be my best self. So, in the beginning with nutrition, like I said, I didn't have a lot of awareness as a kid. I think a lot of us grew up in that age where we're being targeted by a lot of food marketing. We had a lot of processed foods on board, lots of sugar. There was just very little awareness about nutrition, and food education was very minimal, if at all, in school. In terms of sports, there's a lot of disordered eating that can come along with that. And when you start to get to those ages, middle school, high school, where there's a lot of comparison, and then there's a lot of body image portrayal of certain preferences and ideals that are often unrealistic, that can lead to a lot of struggles for us as people, especially when we're young. So for me, that definitely manifested as starting to restrict food and trying to control my body, trying to reduce body fat, and doing it in a way that was not only unsustainable long term, but extremely unhealthy, deprivation oriented, very shame driven. When I found bodybuilding, it allowed me to create this bridge between the rigid control and restriction to now starting to use nutrition as a tool to achieve a physique goal beyond just shrinking away from my life. I wanted to grow, I wanted to get strong, and I knew at some point that I needed a coach to help me do that. And so I surrendered some of my control over to a coach who provided me with a macro plan and some guidance around what I should be eating in order to grow, which was a new goal for me. And it definitely was a positive catalyst towards starting to develop a healthier relationship with food, at least where the goal was no longer to become as small as possible, to eat as little as possible, and to essentially starve myself into oblivion, which was not the best time of my life, I can assure you. But even after bodybuilding, there was this point in time when I officially decided to stop bodybuilding. And part of that decision was driven by the deep desire to develop a healthy, intuitive relationship with food. Bodybuilding provided a construct through which I could operate. It gave me some questions I could ask myself when I was making decisions around nutrition, but it was still very rigid. These are your macros. These are the foods you can eat. These are the foods you can't eat. This is how much you can eat. You can't eat this much in one session. You need to have meals every so many hours. Like, there were lots of rules, and these guidelines were very helpful for someone who was coming from strict restriction. But to go from that to eating intuitively felt like a massive leap. And I can confirm that it has taken several years to get to a point where now I say I can eat very intuitively and I know what works well for my body. And I also am much more aware of when I need to make a change based on what my body is telling me. But that journey in between had a lot of pitfalls. It was anything but predictable. It had a lot of emotional challenges, and there were definitely points in time where I would find myself kind of reverting to old behavior because it was comfortable, familiar, maybe even felt a little bit more controlled than this like vague sense of whatever intuitive eating might look like. But what I found is, despite my initial beliefs that high performers must be extremely rigid in all areas, I found that I perform at my highest level when I'm most connected to my body, and I can tell from day to day what I need to show up as my best self that day. As a female as well, I find that this is extremely important when it comes to being able to optimize nutrition throughout the entire 28-day hormone cycle, which is going to look different depending on where you're at in your cycle. And that's something that there are particular guidelines around, but again, you have to learn how to listen to your body so you can identify what's going to be best for you throughout those different stages. So finding that ability to tap into what's happening inside and show up for myself in the way that I know I need for that day based on that intuitive awareness has allowed me to perform at a higher level in every other area of my life, and has allowed me to develop a skill set of self-awareness that then translates to the way that I can show up in other areas of life because I'm so attuned to what I need, where I might be falling short of an ideal that I'm holding, where I might even be holding beliefs about an ideal that I don't even realize are driving my behavior, where I may need to make adjustments and tweaks to keep myself progressing consistently versus just trying to power through and grind rigidly for a short amount of time only to hit a wall and then have to make a change. So being able to develop this skill set has allowed me to show up at a higher level in every other area of my life. And this is something that I really, really want and strive to support my clients to achieve in their own lives, because having that self-awareness is going to allow you to accomplish more than any set of rigid rules ever could. So if you want to develop this like mindset of performance nutrition, you have to move past restriction. Like maybe for a time in your life, there's been a goal of, I just want to get as lean as possible. And the only way I can conceptualize how to do that is to restrict. There's like some truth in that. If you want to lose body fat, you need to operate in a caloric deficit. But the problem is that the framework is too limited and it's too negative. We start to frame food as the enemy. And when we do that, there's so much fear and shame that clogs up our processes that we're no longer able to hear our bodies clearly. We're no longer able to objectively recognize, oh, this would be best in this moment. This might not be the best option in a very objective way because there's so many rules and almost like moralistic judgments that we start to attach to food. Instead, when you start to think about food as fuel, you can apply this concept of kind of crowding out the things that might not be the best fuel for you. For instance, you go from this mindset of like, okay, I have a cookie and I have an apple. Okay, the cookie is bad and the apple is good. And I can't have the cookie because it's bad and I'm not supposed to. And the apple is what I should have. And like, I need to have that because like, that's on my list of foods that I can't have. Already there's all of these like moralistic judgments around those foods. And what ends up happening is there's this little voice of rebellion that can pop up inside that's like, at some point, like, dang it, I'm an adult. I can have the cookie if I want it. Or I have been so disciplined and have deprived myself in all of these other areas that I deserve to have the cookie. And gosh darn it, I'm going to have the cookie. And so the decision begins to be made out of this idea of deprivation. And we hit that point of like frustration that breaks through where we say, screw it. I'm tired of the rules. I've been so rigid. I haven't even lost a pound. I might as well just have the cookie. Everyone around me is having the cookie. Like there's this whole cycle that happens when we start to judge food in this moralistic way, because we've already deemed one good and one bad. And now we're choosing the apple over the cookie because the apple is good and we should have it. And then the moment we have the cookie, what happens? We start to judge ourselves. We start to self-criticize. There's just this shame spiral that follows. And that shame spiral then just further clogs up our ability to make objective decisions. That is a very like basic and I would say almost immature way of looking at food. It's a process and it's a stage that we have to go through when we are ingraining a new set of rules. But the goal is not to stay there. The goal is to mature past that and start to move into this more wise mind way of viewing it, where we think, okay, I have different options for how I want to fuel myself right now. Equally good, with no moralistic judgment, I could choose the cookie or I could choose the apple. I'm allowed to have either. I'm an adult. I can make that decision. So being good or bad, should or should not, can't be the filter anymore. What is the filter? The filter is something that you have to decide based on what's important to you in regards to health. For me, I think about what's going to be best for my digestion and to support my energy levels and my most sharp and clear brain function for the rest of the day. When I ask myself those questions, it's really easy for me to choose. I'm going to choose the apple. Like 9 times out of 10, I'm going to choose the apple. Now, there's going to be times where I'm like, my most important thing right now is I'd really like to have something that's fun that I enjoy, and I'm like would really love to have a cookie. Great. Then I make that conscious decision. There's no guilt, there's no shame. I made the conscious decision. I knew the filter for my decision making in that moment, and I moved forward with that. But 9 times out of 10, I think about what's going to most positively impact my energy levels and focus, because those are two parameters that are extremely important to me when it comes to my performance. So now I'm making decisions based on that filter. There's no longer this moralistic good bad judgment, because that just leads to the shame spiral and the sense of deprivation, and then the ongoing cycle of restriction and binging and all of that crap that then just keeps us locked into this old way of thinking. But being able to shift your filter and ask yourself the right question that triggers the kind of response that you want, that moves you towards what you want most, the decision making becomes so much easier, and there's no more self-judgment around it. It's like, oh, I made this decision because this was the question I was asking myself in that moment. That's it. These were the beliefs, the thoughts, the mindset that was driving that behavior. And once I'm aware of that, I'm making conscious decisions. And when you make conscious decisions, there's no room for self-judgment anymore. There's self-evaluation. You can ask yourself, was that question that I asked myself in that moment actually helpful? Did that actually achieve what I was hoping to achieve? If the goal was, I really want to enjoy myself and have something that sounds delicious right now, and I had the cookie and it was delicious, awesome. I achieved my objective. But if I had the cookie because, well, I already had one bite, I might as well have the whole thing. I'm never going to be allowed to have a cookie again. So like, I might as well have 3 in this moment, and then I'll just start the diet tomorrow. The shame spiral that follows is not only not helpful, but it can kind of inhibit that ability to self-evaluate and say, oh, I didn't feel great about that decision. I realized maybe I asked myself the wrong question, or I could see that there was this sense of deprivation driving that spiral of decision making. So it's not that the cookie's bad or I can't even trust myself with cookies anymore. It's that my mindset going into it wasn't helpful. Now let me think of a mindset that might be more helpful. And then you can adjust, and you're constantly course correcting with no, again, self-judgment to the point of degrading or even elevating your character. You're not a better person for having chosen the apple. You're not a worse person for having chosen the cookie. You just have to ask yourself if the way that you made that decision is working for you, and if it's helping you achieve what you define as health, which again is driven by a clear vision and knowing what that means for you. So, what are common pitfalls for nutrition with high achievers? I think one of the most difficult things is just having a really busy schedule. You have a lot on your plate, so to speak. You have a lot going on. Your schedule is really busy right from the start of the day. Like, it's just really easy to start to skip meals. I have met so many high performers who don't have breakfast. They might have lunch, or they might have like a shake or a protein bar for breakfast and then just work through lunch. And then they go home at night and they end up eating so much and grazing and feeling like they can't get on top of their intake, and they stress eat and they start getting really anxious about the nighttime because of this spiral that keeps happening. And then there's a fear of even increasing food earlier in the day, of having breakfast, of having lunch, because like I'm already eating so much at night, I can't just add more calories on top of it. I'm already gaining weight. But there's this leap of faith that has to happen where you say, okay, if I fuel myself consistently, especially during the times when my body and brain need the most fuel because I'm most active and demanding the most from my body and mind, then naturally I won't eat as much at the end of the day because I won't actually be starving when I get there. And I won't be driving my stress levels up so high by under eating all day long that all I can do at the end of the day is naturally try to catch up physiologically from all the calories I've been missing and try to manage all the stress that's been building up all day. If you can take time to fuel yourself at the beginning of the day, in the middle of your day, just consistently giving yourself boluses of energy that help support your output, I promise your performance will be better. Your blood sugar levels will be more stable. Your body will be able to metabolize the caffeine that you're taking in a little bit better. You probably won't need as much caffeine because you'll be getting real energy in the day. Your cortisol levels won't be so out of whack, and you will naturally be able to modulate your eating at the end of the day more effectively. And then you'll sleep better, and then you'll wake up, and then you'll make better decisions because you're more well rested. So there's this cycle that's happening right now that becomes this avalanche of poor decisions and then poor performance. You have to start from the start of your day. You need to start fueling yourself at the beginning of your day and really get on top of that and apply your discipline, which you might be labeling your under eating as discipline. Apply your discipline instead to fueling yourself consistently throughout the day and notice what happens. When we stress eat, we tend to under eat throughout the day. We tend to over caffeinate, and then we have to deal with the consequences at the end of the day when our body is telling us we are starving, we need to eat. And now you're making all of these decisions in a state of high fatigue and burnout. You have to start making those decisions at the beginning of your day. It will change your life, I promise. Like, if you feel like your energy levels are unstable, you have to be objective and honest with yourself about how you're fueling yourself throughout the day. Like, are you giving your body what it needs all day long? Are you waiting until you're absolutely on E before you start fueling, and then you're making decisions from a place of stress? Also, you can't just fill in the gaps with supplements. Like, you have to be giving yourself real food. You can sit there and give yourself 25 different vitamins throughout the day. You could take a protein shake. Like, we can like meet our macros or our micros with these supplements, but not be getting real food throughout the day that's feeding our gut microbiome, which then supports our mental health and our ability to show up cognitively in the way that we want to throughout the day. Like, you have to be fueling with real foods that come from the earth. Like, it makes a massive difference. And again, there's this leap of faith that has to happen where you say, what I'm doing right now isn't working. I have to try something different. And I don't know if it will work, but I'm going to give it my best shot for 3 weeks and notice. I'm just going to notice. I'm not going to make any changes from there. I'm just going to commit to, I'm going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I'm going to notice what happens. How do I feel in my body? How's my digestion? How are my energy levels? How's my mood throughout the day? How's my mental performance? Do I find myself crashing in the afternoon? Do I find myself binging at night? Are all of those things improving? What is happening? And you gather data. And once you know, then you can make a conscious decision. But you have to give yourself the shot to try something different. If it's not working for you, if not eating all day hasn't allowed you to lose any body fat, then you have to start fueling differently. And it may seem counterintuitive to fuel earlier in the day, but I promise it will change your life. And the goal here is not to be perfect. Like, if you're a high performer, you often think that you need to be perfect in everything that you do. Perfection is the enemy of good. Like, you cannot expect that. That's not the goal. And there is no perfect way to eat either. It would be great if there was some kind of formula and you can follow such so and so's diet plan that's like optimized for such and such kind of person. Doesn't matter. Your body holds a unique wisdom. You have a unique genetic makeup. You have cultural propensities. Like, there's so much about your body that is unique that you're going to gain more traction and make more consistent progress by learning how to listen to your body than by trying to develop the perfect protocol that you can follow all of the time, which, as I mentioned before, especially for my females, if you're on a 28 32-day hormone cycle, then that's going to look different at different times of the month anyways. So you're going to get more out of being able to hear what your body is telling you and understand what you need to adjust than trying to find the perfect plan that you can stick to all of the time, because honestly, that just doesn't exist. So if you want to gain momentum, if you want to progress consistently, you have to put more emphasis on consistency than perfection. This is not about short-term intensity. It's about long-term consistency. It will get you farther every single time. Steady, sustainable pace. Life, the journey, it's all just a marathon. You have to find a pace and a process that allows you to continually make progress versus sprinting to the point of burnout and having to spend just as much time recovering before you can start to make progress again. And then having to deal with the psychological consequences of, well, I made so much progress and now I'm backsliding. And I made so much progress and now I'm backsliding. Instead, being able to say, like, I'm making a little bit of progress and getting 1% better every single day, which then just buffers my self-belief and confidence, which then allows me to, again, make more progress over time. That will get you farther every single time. So how do you build sustainable habits? You got to have some meal planning strategies that work for you. Like if you're on a budget, that's going to be a big thing. That can be really challenging for people. It can feel like eating healthier is more expensive. And in some ways, apples to apples, literally it is. If you're going to choose organic, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. But if you think about the long-term effects of choosing foods that nourish your body, of more likely than not eating at home more often than eating out, of being able to eat a moderate amount versus overeating, of not paying thousands of dollars in medical bills down the line because your gut health is wrecked, or you have cancer, or you have an autoimmune disorder, or intense amounts of inflammation and pain in your body, or mentally you're crashing and paying thousands and thousands of dollars for therapy and SSRIs and every other thing that we need when our bodies aren't functioning properly. Not that therapy is a bad thing, because I think therapy is awesome and even healthy people need therapy. But if you think about the long-term consequences of that, then understand that your short-term investment is going to save you so much in the long term, not just money, but experiences. If you're healthy and active and mentally sharp, you're in the game for longer. You get to show up for your life for way longer. And for all the things that we invest in, we should really start to understand the value of investing in our health over the value of investing in anything else in our lives. Like, it is so worth it. Outside of cost, however, you have to have some strategies for meal planning. Preparation is king. If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Like, if you are a busy human, you have got to have some routine around prepping food. You need to make things simple and sustainable. Do not try to do the most complex thing. You can get a little bit better over time where you start to add in new things, and you might, refine your meal prep and try new recipes. But when you get started with a routine, make it simple and sustainable. Fresh veggies are great, but if you can get huge bags of frozen veggies from Costco and throw them on a sheet pan and cook them at 375 for 45 minutes, and you can easily do that as soon as you get home from work so you have veggies for the next few days, that's going to be so much easier than sitting there and chopping up veggies for an hour and roasting them and then getting absolutely burned out because you just don't have time to spend 4 hours on meal prep each week. Get some ground beef, get some fish you can throw in the air fryer, find some easy recipes for like sheet pan meals where you can cook it all at once. Get a rice cooker, get an egg boiler, make it simple for yourself, and then stick with it. Find things you can sustain, like have a plan and stick with it. Another common pitfall is trying to change the plan constantly. Instead, I want you to create a plan or work with a coach to build a plan, and then commit to it with all you've got for 3 weeks straight and notice what happens. Do not shift it. Do not try to look for the next best thing. Like, we distract ourselves with all these shiny things, and everything from social media to TV to our friends will try to tell us like, oh, you should try this diet. Oh, you should watch this video. Don't, like, clear out the distractions and stick to your process. Put your head down and just commit to it for 3 weeks. And then you can start to make tweaks or work with your coach to make adjustments as needed. Like, really give yourself time to adapt and to get a little bit better at the routine. A lot of times we start a new routine and the first week is so overwhelming that we're like, there's no way we can sustain this. And we burn out and we try to make a change. And then we just get frustrated because it's like, it feels like we have all these different threads of habits that we've started that we've just never seen through to the end. To really commit to something and say, okay, let me trust that just like in every other area of my life, that if I practice this, I will get better. I know the first week of meal prepping is going to be the most tedious and the most time consuming, but every time I do it, it's going to get a little bit easier. That by the end of the first few weeks, I'm already like in a much faster routine with this. And by the time I'm 3 months into this, I'm going to be meal prepping through the week. No problem. It's going to be easy, but I have to remember that I'm in this for the long game. You also need to celebrate your wins. Like, we want consistency, and I'm saying, yes, do it for 3 weeks. And that sounds fantastic. But the thing is, like, you also need to recognize that every day, every meal, every activity you decide to do, every time you decide to like take the stairs instead of the elevator, you are putting points on the scoreboard for the kind of person that you want to be. So like allow yourself to focus on racking up points throughout the day instead of thinking everything needs to be perfect the whole time. Celebrate every win. Every time you're like, I chose the apple instead of the cookie because that's most aligned with my goals. Heck yeah. High five, self. I made a decision in alignment with my goals. That's freaking awesome. Hype yourself up. Like, we put shame around celebrating ourselves because we think, well, I should already be there. I should be perfect. I should be better. Like, this is like, I should already be making these decisions. Like, no one should be celebrating me for this. Like, why do we do that? Why not? Why not give ourselves a high five for those little wins? It's way more motivating and exciting and enjoyable than saying, well, you're not perfect. So, like, you don't deserve to celebrate anything. That sucks, and no one wants to be on that team. So start celebrating yourself every time you put a point on the scoreboard. Also, learn how to navigate restaurants. The truth is, you're not going to be never going to a restaurant unless you're in prep for a bodybuilding show. I wouldn't even say that's the goal, but you need to learn how to navigate restaurant menus effectively. One thing that can help initially is looking at a menu ahead of time. I don't think this is something you need to do all of the time, but it can be helpful if, say you have a few different options, or if you're presenting options to a group of friends or coworkers, find a few places that offer some like simple dishes. Like, oh, cool, this place has some steak and grilled veggies. Awesome. Let me offer that to the group and see if we can go there. And then I know what I'm going to get when I go there. Like, plan ahead of time and kind of have an idea of what a healthy meal might look like. All right, I'm going to look for the least processed protein source. I'm going to see if they have a side of vegetables. If they do, I'm going to ask them not to cook them in oil or butter. A lot of times they'll steam them or grill them for you. Like, you can really work with restaurants, and thankfully there's usually a lot of options for healthy restaurant choices now. So look into it ahead of time. And if you're traveling, same thing, like see what resources you have around you. If you have a place like Whole Foods in the place that you're going, a lot of times they will have like a hot food bar, or they will have like pre-prepared food where you can go get like several 6-ounce portions of salmon or roasted vegetables. Like, you can find places that have some pre-prepped foods that are pretty healthy and pretty simple, and that's what you're going to be looking for. So planning ahead of time, getting like a little list of like restaurants, grocery stores that you can go to that are quick and easy options, so that when you're traveling, when you're at a restaurant, when you're out of town, whatever, when you're on the road, you already know you have resources. You have to go to a gas station. A lot of times they have boiled eggs and they have apples and bananas at the register. You may have never noticed it before, but a lot of gas stations do. So start to have your little list so that no matter where you are, you always know your best option and you trust yourself to make the best decision. This is, again, not about being perfect. It's about developing the skill set to make the best decisions with the resources that you have. Say, how can I get 1% better? What's my next right step? And if you're constantly asking yourself those questions, the amount of confidence that you build will only propel your momentum as you move forward. So find a plan. If you don't have one, or if you don't know what to start, or you're overwhelmed with options, get a coach. Like, the amount that you can learn in 3 months with a coach will absolutely revolutionize your life. If you can work with someone who can help you learn to listen to your body, you get to take that with you to the bank for the rest of your life. Like, if you imagine if you could learn to understand what your body is telling you and then make wise decisions out of that, so that no matter what's going on externally, you know you're living a healthy lifestyle based on your definition of health. Imagine being in a place with food where, like, you're no longer stressed when you go out to a restaurant. You're no longer worried that you might overeat or binge. Like, you're just in this place of, like, confident self-awareness where no matter what life throws at you, you know how to make the healthy decision. Like, there's just not a better place to be than that. Like, to feel confident, secure, empowered in your own body, I think is one of the most powerful states of being. And having gotten to that place for myself, not all the time, there's always room to grow, but saying that, like, 99% of the time I feel that way with myself, like, it is my absolute passion and purpose to help other people achieve that, because it's so possible. And I've been in a place where I never thought it could be. I was barely eating, and then I was binging all the time, and I was counting everything, and I was so stressed about food, and I cried about my body, and I just hated the way I looked all of the time. I hated the way I felt. I never had energy. And now I'm like, I love my body. I love being able to move. I love fueling my body. It's not hard to make the healthy choice. I love what I eat. Like, meal prep does not stress me out. I never thought I'd be able to say all those things, but it is possible. Take it from someone who has been in a very different place before and has slowly worked to get to this point. If you'd like to find out more, just kind of hear what working together would look like definitely book a discovery call. I'll post a link below and you can check it out, and we can just hop on a call and talk about your goals, what your struggles are, and how we can start to overcome those to get you to this place where you feel very confident and empowered in your body. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment. If you have certain things that you're struggling with most in your nutrition, definitely reach out to me or comment below, because you're probably not the only one. And the more we work on this stuff together, the more we can develop a whole arsenal of solutions that help us move towards our goals and overcome those obstacles that trip us all up at times. I hope to see you guys next time on Time Under Tension.